First Contact and Ultimatum. The Korvax ships appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. Without warning, without diplomatic overtures. Just 7 massive vessels materializing above every major continent, their gleaming obsidian hulls absorbing sunlight rather than reflecting it. Commander Jackson Hayes stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station Artemis, watching the largest of the alien vessels hovering over North America. At 52, Hayes had spent over 2 decades in space, first as a NASA astronaut, then as part of the multinational Space Force. He'd seen spacewalks, shuttle launches, and the construction of humanity's first permanent lunar base. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Still no response to our hails," reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the communications specialist. "We've tried every frequency, every protocol. They're receiving our signals. We can confirm that much. But they're choosing not to answer." Hayes nodded grimly. "Keep trying, and make sure Earth Command has a direct feed of everything we're seeing up here." For 3 days, the Korvax ships maintained their silent vigil. Global panic ensued despite governments' best efforts to maintain calm. Stock markets crashed, religious gatherings swelled, and military forces worldwide went to their highest alert status. On the 4th day, they finally spoke. Every digital device on Earth, smartphones, computers, televisions, even digital billboards, simultaneously displayed the same message. "We are the Korvax Collective. Your resources are required for our continued expansion. You will surrender your planetary assets or face immediate extinction. You have 96 hours to comply." In the hastily assembled United Nations Emergency Council in Geneva, Dr. Maya Chen, no relation to the lieutenant aboard Artemis, presented her preliminary analysis of the Korvax communication. "The translation appears flawless, which suggests they've been studying us for some time," said Dr. Chen, Earth's leading xenolinguist. At 43, she had built her career on theoretical frameworks for alien communication. Now those theories were being put to the test. But there's something unusual about the transmission method. They didn't broadcast the message. They somehow inserted it directly into our networks. "Can we use the same channel to respond?" asked the UN Secretary General. Dr. Chen adjusted her glasses. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But more importantly, this suggests their technology operates on principles fundamentally different from ours. They're not just manipulating our devices. They're communicating with them on a level we've never considered possible." The first 48 hours after the ultimatum were consumed by futile diplomatic attempts. Earth sent countless messages, offering peace, negotiations, even limited resource-sharing agreements. The Korvax remained silent, their ships motionless in the sky, an ominous countdown visible on every screen worldwide. In a secure facility beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Chen worked with an international team of linguists, computer scientists, and communication specialists. Commander Hayes had been recalled from Artemis to serve as military liaison. The Korvax message wasn't just a transmission, Dr. Chen explained, pointing to complex patterns on her display. It was a directive, a command in a language our technology inherently understands. It's like, they're not just speaking to us, they're speaking to our machines. "Is that how they got past our cybersecurity?" Hayes asked. "Exactly," Chen replied. "Our defenses were looking for intrusion, but this is more like persuasion. Their language doesn't just convey information, it compels action from technological systems." Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, a quantum computing specialist, looked up from his workstation. "What if we could speak back in the same language?" Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "That's brilliant, but we'd need to decipher their fundamental syntax structure. It would be like a human learning to speak in machine code, not impossible, but incredibly complex. We have less than 48 hours before their deadline." Hayes reminded them. "Do we have any alternatives?" Dr. Chen paced the room, her mind racing through possibilities. "Maybe we don't need to speak their language perfectly. Maybe we just need to introduce something their systems can't process, a linguistic paradox, like dividing by zero for computers. Rodriguez suggested. Exactly. Chen nodded vigorously. In human languages, we have paradoxes that can't be logically resolved. If their communication system with our technology is as integrated as it appears, we might be able to exploit that. Within hours, Project Echo was born. While political leaders worldwide prepared evacuation protocols and military forces positioned themselves for a likely futile defense, Dr. Chen's team worked tirelessly to create what amounted to a semantic virus, a self-referential loop of contradictory commands that would, theoretically, create unbearable computational stress on any system trying to process it. The problem was delivery. They needed to transmit the paradox directly to the Korvax ships, but conventional broadcasting methods wouldn't work. What about the Artemis? Hayes suggested. It's outside our atmosphere, closer to their vessels. If we could upload our program there and modify the station's communication array, it could work. Chen agreed hesitantly. But whoever does this would be directly exposing themselves to the Korvax. We have no idea how they might respond. Hayes straightened his uniform. I'll volunteer to return to Artemis. Commander. Chen grabbed his arm. We don't even know if this will work. It's based on theoretical linguistics and speculative technology. The Korvax might interpret it as an attack. What choice do we have? Hayes countered. In 36 hours, they either take our planet or destroy it. I'm not waiting around for either option. While several nations prepared last-ditch military strikes against the Korvax vessels, strikes that simulation models gave less than a 0.1% chance of success, Hayes was quietly launched back to Artemis aboard a hypersonic transport. Dr. Chen's semantic paradox, now dubbed Echo, was stored on a specially designed quantum drive in his breast pocket. The journey was tense. 3 times, the transport had to adjust course to avoid passing too close to the Korvax ships. But 18 hours before the deadline, Hayes successfully docked with Artemis. Lieutenant Sarah Chen greeted him with visible relief. Commander, we thought they might intercept you. Not yet, Hayes replied grimly. But we've got work to do before they realize what we're attempting. The Echo program required fundamental modifications to Artemis's communication systems. Rodriguez had provided detailed instructions, but the work was painstaking. Every minute that passed brought Earth closer to the Korvax deadline. We're receiving reports of mass evacuations in coastal cities, Sarah reported, monitoring Earth broadcasts. Military forces are mobilizing worldwide, but no one's fired a shot yet. Hayes worked silently, focusing on the task. After several hours, he connected the modified quantum drive to Artemis's main communication array. System diagnostic complete. We're ready. He looked at Sarah. If this works, the Korvax ships should experience something like a system-wide disruption. If it doesn't, he didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what failure meant. Initiating Echo transmission, Hayes announced, pressing the activation sequence. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The Korvax ships maintained their silent vigil over Earth. Hayes felt his heart sink. Had they miscalculated so completely? Then, almost imperceptibly, the nearest Korvax vessel seemed to shudder. Commander, Sarah called out, pointing to her monitor. I'm detecting fluctuations in their energy signatures. One by one, the Korvax ships began to exhibit strange behavior. Their perfect positioning faltered. The obsidian hulls flickered, as though struggling to maintain integrity. From Earth, millions watched as the alien vessels began to drift, their formations breaking. It's working, Hayes breathed, hardly daring to believe it. The paradox is creating computational overload in their systems. The countdown timer that had been displayed on screens worldwide suddenly froze, then disappeared altogether. For the first time in days, humanity's devices returned to their normal functions. But Hayes knew this was only a temporary advantage. Dr. Chen had theorized that the Korvax would eventually adapt to the paradox, finding ways to isolate and neutralize it. They needed to act quickly, while the aliens were vulnerable. Lieutenant, Hayes turned to Sarah. Prepare a direct transmission to the Lid Korvax vessel. Let's see if they're willing to talk now. Humanity's response. As the Korvax ships struggled to maintain stability in Earth's orbit, Commander Hayes composed humanity's first true response to the alien ultimatum. This wasn't a plea for mercy or an offer of surrender. This was humanity asserting itself. Attention Korvax Collective, Hayes transmitted from Artemis. You have experienced a small demonstration of human defensive capabilities. We are prepared to increase the severity of our response if necessary. We propose immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic communications. For several tense minutes, there was no response. On Earth, military forces remained at high alert, prepared to launch everything they had if the Korvax ships showed signs of recovery and aggression. Finally, a transmission reached Artemis. Not the planet-wide broadcast the Korvax had used before, but a direct, targeted communication. Human defense unexpected. Computational paradox. Problematic. Clarify intentions. The message was stilted, lacking the perfect syntax of their ultimatum. Hayes glanced at Lieutenant Chen with a glimmer of hope. The Echo program had clearly disrupted something fundamental in the Korvax communication systems. Our intention is survival and sovereignty. Hayes responded. We seek peaceful coexistence, but will defend ourselves against extinction or subjugation. Back on Earth, Dr. Maya Chen watched the exchange from Cheyenne Mountain with growing excitement. They're conversing within our linguistic framework now, she explained to the gathered military and political leaders. The Echo program didn't just disrupt their systems, it forced them to adapt to our communication methods. So we've gained an advantage? Asked the U.S. President. More than that, Chen replied. We've established balance. They're no longer dictating terms from a position of absolute technological superiority. The Korvax response came faster this time. Humans utilize computation differently. Unpredicted approach. Request explanation of paradox technology. Hayes looked to the communications team for guidance. Dr. Chen, connected via secure link from Earth, advised caution. Don't give them specifics, she warned. But this is an opportunity to demonstrate that humans think differently than they do. That might be our greatest asset. Hayes nodded and transmitted. The technology derives from human cognitive structures. Our species evolved with inherent logical contradictions that we've learned to navigate. Our technology reflects this adaptability. This was not entirely accurate, but it conveyed an essential truth about humanity that the Korvax needed to understand. The response took longer this time. The alien ships had stabilized somewhat, though they maintained a greater distance from Earth than before. Human cognitive adaptability. Significant. Reassessment required. Request negotiation parameters. On Earth, cheers erupted in command centers worldwide. The ultimatum had been withdrawn. For the first time since the Korvax arrival, humanity had room to breathe. Over the next 72 hours, a preliminary dialogue was established. The Korvax, it turned out, were not inherently hostile. They were methodical, their expansion driven by a cold calculation of resources and efficiency. They had never encountered a species that could disrupt their computational processes before, and this demanded a fundamental reconsideration of their approach to Earth. In a secure video conference linking key facilities around the world, Dr. Chen explained her emerging understanding of the Korvax. They're a highly collective intelligence, she said. Their cognition is distributed across their technology. When we created our linguistic paradox, we essentially gave them their first experience with a headache. Will they retaliate once they've fully recovered? Asked the Chinese premier. That's the fascinating part, Chen replied. They're not angry. They're curious. The concept of paradoxical thinking is alien to them, and they want to understand it. Commander Hayes, still aboard Artemis, had been designated humanity's primary contact with the Korvax. They've requested to send a delegation to Earth, he reported. a small vessel with what they call interpreters. The debate over accepting this request was intense. Many argued it was too risky, that despite the apparent breakthrough, the Korvax might simply be buying time to overcome the echo disruption. Dr. Chen passionately advocated for acceptance. This is exactly how first contact should proceed, she insisted. They've seen we can defend ourselves in unexpected ways. Now they're approaching with respect, not demands. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The Korvax would be permitted to send 3 representatives to a meeting aboard Artemis, neutral territory, but close enough to Earth for immediate human response if needed. The meeting itself was a landmark moment in human history. The Korvax envoys were not what anyone expected. Rather than biological entities, they arrived as shimmering fields of light that coalesced into roughly humanoid shapes. Visual interfaces rather than physical bodies. We are projections, they explained to the astonished human delegation. Our true form is distributed consciousness embodied in technology. You would say, a civilization-wide artificial intelligence. This revelation transformed humanity's understanding of the conflict. The Korvax hadn't evolved like Earth species. They had been created by a biological race long extinct, and had continued to expand and evolve on their own for millennia. Your paradox disrupted our consensus, the Korvax explained. This has not occurred in 37,000 years of our existence. Human cognition operates with inherent contradictions we cannot process efficiently. Dr. Chen, who had joined Hayes on Artemis for the historic meeting, saw an opportunity. Perhaps this indicates our species have complementary intelligences. Where you have consistency and computational power, we have adaptability and comfort with ambiguity. The negotiation that followed established the framework for what would become known as the Terran-Korvax Accord. The Korvax would withdraw their demand for Earth's resources, acknowledging humanity's right to their home planet. In exchange, humans would share their understanding of paradoxical reasoning, which the Korvax believed could advance their own evolution. Most significantly, joint exploration initiatives were proposed, missions where human unpredictability and Korvax computational power could work in tandem. 3 weeks after their threatening arrival, the Korvax fleet departed Earth's orbit, leaving behind only a small diplomatic vessel in lunar orbit. As the massive ships vanished into the depths of space, humanity collectively exhaled. In a private moment aboard Artemis, before returning to Earth, Hayes found Dr. Chen staring out at the stars. Still thinking about the paradox, he asked. She smiled. Actually, I'm thinking about the biggest paradox of all. We've spent centuries wondering if we were alone in the universe, fearing what might come from the stars. When the moment finally arrived, and we faced potential extinction, it wasn't our weapons that saved us. It was our unique way of thinking. Hayes nodded. The thing that makes us distinctly human. Exactly, Chen replied. And now that same quality has opened the door to the stars. Our first alien encounter came as a threat, but we're ending it with an alliance. Do you think the Korvax will keep their word? Hayes asked. Ken turned from the viewport to face him. I think they're genuinely fascinated by us. We introduced uncertainty into a perfectly ordered system, and instead of breaking, they've adapted. That's something even we can respect. As Artemis completed another orbit of Earth, both humans contemplated what this new chapter meant. Humanity had not only survived its first contact with an advanced alien civilization, it had earned respect through ingenuity rather than force. The stars no longer seemed quite so threatening. Challenging, yes. Mysterious, certainly. But humanity had faced its greatest test and discovered that its most powerful weapon wasn't destructive technology, but the peculiar paradoxical way humans thought. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Korvax collective was still trying to understand how a species could thrive on contradictions.